Picture sunrise on the plains of Gaugamela. A sea of Persian banners, the ground booby-trapped for chariots, and one young king who refuses to blink. Alexander doesn't outnumber Darius. He outthinks him, slicing the battlefield at an angle. In minutes, an empire falls, and a new world begins before your eyes. Section 1. The Killing Field at Dawn, October 1st, 331 BC. The plain west of Gaugamela, near the village of Telgomel in northern Mesopotamia. The night wind has died, and the dust hangs low like smoke that never found a fire. Somewhere in the darkness, a mule screams, then goes silent. Above, the stars are sharp and cold, indifferent to what is forming beneath them. On a slight rise at the edge of the Macedonian camp, a veteran infantryman named Python tightens the strap of his linothorax. He's older than most here. Scarred from Issus, from the long march through Syria, from the river crossings that broke men with less stubborn blood, he rolls his shoulders and listens. You can hear it if you stop breathing. The soft clatter of bronze, the hiss of whetstones, the low murmur of men trying not to be afraid. The phalanx companies are already forming by torchlight, each taxis assembling like puzzle pieces in the dark. Sarissas lie on the ground in neat rows, 5 and 6 meters of seasoned ashwood. They look like spears meant for giants. Python glances east. In the distance, the Persian host spreads across the horizon, so wide it seems to bend the earth. Thousands of campfires burn in a line so long it could be a city wall. Against that glow, moving shadows, cavalry patrols, infantry drilling, chariots being tested on the flattened earth. The Persians had prepared this ground for weeks. Their engineers leveled the plain, pulled stones, filled ruts, cut and packed the soil until it was hard and smooth. It was a killing field for scythed chariots and massed horse. A battlefield designed to make Macedonian legs slow and Macedonian formations break. Down their line, Persian veterans feel the advantage in their bones. Many of them have fought Greeks before. They expect a cautious advance, a slow phalanx crawl into the mouth of their army. They expect Alexander to step where Darius wants him. But Alexander is awake before sunrise, riding the line with a cloak thrown over his shoulders, like a shadow that learned to command men. He is 25, but already the sort of figure soldiers believe the gods move around for entertainment. His horse Bucephalus snorts under him, black mane flicking, hooves biting sparks from the hard soil. To Alexander's left stands Parmenion, gray-haired, blunt, proven in a dozen wars. He commands the Macedonian left wing. Tonight, he argued for a night attack against the Persians while they slept. Alexander had refused him. Not because he feared the night, but because he refused to steal a victory. He wanted the sun to see it. He wanted Persia to understand that their best army, on their best field, could be broken in open daylight. Now he rides to the right wing, where the companions wait. A wedge of heavy cavalry in bronze helmets, cuirasses strapped tight, Xystin lances balanced across their thighs. These men are aristocrats and killers, friends of the king since childhood. Their commander this morning is Alexander himself. He gathers them close. The words he speaks are not shouted. They're low, almost intimate, as if he's letting them in on a secret. Hold the line. Trust the march. When the moment opens, ride with me. We break their center. We end this. The men nod, not because they understand every calculation, but because they understand him. The plan is crossing their faces already. Fear mixed with the strange calm that comes when your leader looks like he's already seen the ending. Sunrise comes fast in Mesopotamia. Light spills across the plain, and every banner, every bronze scale and horsehead catches fire. The Macedonian battle line forms in a way that looks wrong to Persian eyes. Not one thin line moving straight forward, but a deep, layered formation. The phalanx in the center, yes. 6 taxiais of sarissa infantry with hypaspists guarding their flank. But on each wing, cavalry with reserves behind them. Light troops scattered in front, ready to sting and disappear. Behind all this, a second line. Troops angled backward like a doorway half closed. It's as if Alexander expects to be surrounded. It's as if he wants them to try. Across the plain, Darius III watches from his royal chariot positioned in the center, elevated by a small mound so he can see. Around him, the immortals and the guard cavalry in glittering armor. Persian nobles on his wings, scythed chariots in front like blades waiting to roll. Persian veterans see the Macedonian line step out. They expect it to come forward toward them. Instead it drifts, a slow sideways movement at first, so subtle it feels like a mirage. The Macedonian right wing, Alexander's wing, begins to move diagonally across the face of the Persian army, angled rightward. Not retreating, not charging, sliding. Python feels it in his spine, even from the center. The phalanx adjusts to match the king's drift, stepping like a single creature, left feet, right feet, sarissas rising and settling. Dust puffs under sandals and hooves. The army is moving not into the field Darius leveled, but toward its edge. From the Persian side, confusion flickers through the officers. Their battlefield preparation is centered on one expectation: a straight advance. Alexander is refusing to be centered. Their own line begins to stretch to follow him. Cavalry on Darius's left wing, Bessus's wing, angles outward to prevent being outflanked. More horse are sent to cover, then more again. The Persian line becomes thinner as it lengthens, a cloth pulled too far. Persian veterans mutter to each other. He's trying to escape the killing field. He's trying to run. But Python watches Alexander's posture in the distance. The king sits like a man not escaping anything, like a man composing a blow in midair. The drift continues. Faster now. The diagonal movement accelerates, cavalry trotting, then cantering. The companions keep tight formation, left to right, a bronze wedge cutting sideways across the world. The Persians are forced to move with him or risk the shameful thing in ancient war, being flanked. Darius gives the signal. The scythed chariots roll forward. Their wheels are wide, their blades curved and shining. Horses pulling them foam at the mouth, whipped into madness. They gather speed across their perfect ground. The sound hits the Macedonian line like thunder, wood strain, iron rattle, hooves pounding packed earth. Python lowers his sarissa and braces. The men around him tighten ranks. The chariots are coming straight for the center, but light troops surge out, Agrianians with javelins, archers, slingers. They run forward into the gap before the phalanx, not to meet the chariots head-on, but to shred their momentum. Javelins strike horses, arrows find drivers. Slingstones crack helmets. The first chariots swerve wildly, some overturning, blades cutting empty air. In the center, the phalanx parts lanes as trained, an opening in the hedge of spears. A few surviving chariots pass through, harmless, caught and killed behind the line by waiting troops. The Persians had expected terror. Instead, they see discipline. And still, Alexander keeps moving right, pulling their army wider, thinner, off balance. The trap is tightening, and the Persians don't know they're already inside it. Section 2. The diagonal rush. The dust from the broken chariots is still settling when the Persian line makes its second mistake. It breathes outward. Cavalry units keep edging to their left, trying to match Alexander's drifting right wing. The movement is not panic yet, more like a man who sees a knife and leans away inch by inch without realizing he's stepping into a doorway. Python can feel the Persian pressure even from the center. Their horse are massing on the Macedonian right now, following Alexander like wolves that think they're herding prey. To Persian veterans, it looks like the Macedonians are trying to slip away from the killing field, away from Darius's perfect terrain. But the killing field is no longer the point. The point is the line. Alexander's companions have increased their pace. The wedge is no longer gliding. It's marching at speed, angled like a spear tip searching for ribs. Trumpets sound short, sharp commands. The Macedonian right advances diagonally across the Persian face, faster than anyone expects a heavy cavalry formation to move and stay coherent. On the Persian left wing, the noble cavalry answer the movement by surging forward. They want to cut Alexander off, force him to fight where Darius prepared. Their horses kick up sheets of dust, pennants whip and snap in the wind. It's a proud charge, loud with the belief that weight and numbers will settle this. Alexander sees them coming and does not stop. He doesn't turn in to meet them. He keeps drifting right, inviting them to chase. To the Persian veterans riding in that wing, it's baffling. A king who is confident does not run sideways. A leader who means to attack does not keep his best troops moving away from the enemy's center. They think he's avoiding contact. They think they're winning the positioning battle without drawing blood. Then the ground under their confidence begins to shift. Because every yard Alexander drifts right forces the Persians to stretch again. Units that were meant to be thick and crushing are thinning like a rope pulled too tight. The Persian cavalry are now well away from their infantry support, separated by open space and dust. Their line has become long, proud, and fragile. Alexander has been waiting for that moment. A messenger rides up to him at a gallop, leaning low over the horse's neck. Breath ragged, face dust-caked. One glance from Alexander, one nod, and the king raises his lance. The trumpet call that follows is not a warning. It's a release. The companion wedge pivots left, not slowly, not cautiously. It turns like a door slammed in a storm. The front ranks angle inward, the rear ranks compress, and suddenly the Macedonian right wing is no longer sliding across the Persian line. It's lunging straight into it. Python hears the roar before he sees it. It travels across the plain like a wave breaking on stone. The companions go from diagonal march to explosive charge in a breath. Their lances drop in unison. Bronze flashes. Horses stretch into full gallop. The wedge becomes a flying blade. Persian veterans stare, stunned. The speed is wrong. This is not how heavy cavalry is supposed to maneuver. It's like watching a siege tower sprint. The Persian cavalry, who had been chasing now, have to wheel back hastily, turning their horses to face the oncoming strike. Some make it, others don't. Their line is caught mid-motion, half-angled away, without the solid front they expected to build. The collision is violent and immediate. Scythed lances punch into Persian breastplates. Horses crash into horses. Men are thrown under hooves. The Macedonian wedge doesn't spread out on impact. It drills forward. Each rank pushes the next, and the Persians feel something terrifying. Not a charge that will bounce and reform, but a mass that intends to crawl through them like a tunneling animal. Alexander is in the front, where kings in most armies do not ride. His helmet plume streams behind him. His eyes are fixed on one thing beyond the dust, the faint glint of the Persian center where Darius waits. To the Persian left wing, the realization begins in pieces. First, the sickening feeling that the Macedonians are not trying to escape, but to create an opening. Second, that the opening is widening between their stretched wing and the Persian center. Third, that Alexander is aiming straight for that gap, and there is nothing thick enough to stop him now. Bessus's cavalry throw themselves in. They're brave, experienced, furious. But bravery doesn't fix geometry. The Macedonian wedge punches through the first layer. Persian veterans try to grab lances, hack at horses, pull men down. But the companions behind Alexander are too tightly packed, too fast, too supported by their own momentum. They move like a spear that cannot be swatted aside, because the hand that throws it is the whole Macedonian army. Behind Alexander's charge, the Macedonian phalanx advances as the anvil. Python and his taxis step forward, sarissas leveled, shields braced. The phalanx does not hurry, doesn't need to. Its job is to hold the Persian infantry in place and stop them from closing the gap Alexander has torn open. Persian infantry now see the wedge tearing toward their center with horrifying speed. Some back away instinctively. Others stand frozen. Their commanders try to shout them forward, but the line is already dislocated. They feel the battlefield's axis rotate under them. To the Persians, it's like the Macedonians are crossing the entire war in a single rush. Their king is not at the far edge anymore. He's suddenly in the heart of the field, driving through a corridor that did not exist 5 minutes ago. Python catches glimpses of it between the forest of sarissas. A moving triangle of bronze and pounding hooves, cutting toward Darius as if pulled by a rope. Then the Persian center begins to buckle. Not from impact yet, but from the thought of impact. The immortals tighten around the royal chariot. Guard cavalry ride to close the opening. But the opening is now full of galloping Macedonians. Somewhere ahead, a Persian noble yells, voice cracking, "Protect the king!" The shout ripples like a spark through dry grass, and that is when Persian veterans finally understand. The diagonal drift wasn't retreat. It was the fastest battlefield crossing they've ever seen. And it has put Alexander exactly where no one believes a man can be so soon. The decisive moment is no longer coming. It is already here. Section 3. The royal line breaks. The corridor is choking with dust and corpses, and still Alexander drives forward. His companions do not slow to fight every man in front of them. They fight only what blocks the wedge. Everything else is pushed aside, trampled, or left behind, like driftwood in a flood. A Persian veteran named Artabazus, gray-bearded, armored in scale, a survivor of a dozen court wars, rides near the center with the royal guard. He had fought Greeks in Ionia when he was young, fought rebellious satraps, fought Scythians on the northern marches. He has seen cavalry charges, seen phalanxes, seen kings die. But he has never seen a king arrive like this. One moment, Alexander is far to the right, drifting like a hawk in wide circles. The next, he is in the Persian lungs. Artabazus shouts orders to the guard cavalry. "Close the gap, turn them now!" His horse spins, its eyes white, and he tries to anchor his men into a line. But the gap is not a line-shaped problem anymore. It is a wedge-shaped disaster. Alexander's charge is already inside it. The first Persian guardsman to meet the companions dies without knowing which way his enemy came from. A Macedonian lance takes him through the throat. He tumbles backward into another rider. Both go down under the crush of horses. The guard tries to reform, but the momentum of the wedge keeps splitting them apart, like a river cutting new channels through sand. Alexander's voice is audible now at the front of the storm, sharp, furious, young. He points his lance toward the royal chariot mound. His companions follow the gesture as if it is gravity. Darius can see them. He has been watching battle from the center since sunrise, surrounded by nobles in glittering armor, with the chariot's driver ready and the horses restless. He had expected a grind. He had expected Alexander to be pinned somewhere on the wings, clawing at cavalry in a long contest. Instead, there is suddenly a moving spear of men racing straight toward him through a space that should not exist. Darius stands taller in his chariot, trying to project calm. His purple robes snap in the wind. Around him, The immortals tighten their ring, stepping forward with long spears, shields shining, faces hardening into the look of men who know the next minute may decide history. The Persian center surges to meet the rush. Guard cavalry lunge in from both sides. One unit gets close enough that their leader hurls a javelin toward Alexander. It misses, spinning uselessly into the dust. Alexander does not flinch. He is close enough now that the Persian veterans can see the white plume on his helmet, the hard set of his jaw, the way Bucephalus seems to leap rather than gallop. It is too fast. The distance is collapsing, as if tugged. Artabazus feels it, an ancient dread that has nothing to do with numbers. The dread of a line that is no longer a line, of a center that is no longer safe. Then the Macedonians hit the immortals. The sound is not one sound, but many. Bronze biting bronze, spear shafts cracking, horses screaming, men shouting in languages that don't matter anymore. The immortals are not cowards. They stand and fight. And for a moment the wedge slows. A Macedonian companion is pulled off his horse and killed under a stampede of Persian hooves. Another is stabbed through the side and falls, his lance still clenched in his fist. But behind them are more companions, pushing, squeezing into the gap, turning the battle into a vice. Alexander slashes with his sword when his lance breaks. He leans from the saddle, striking at faces, necks, hands. His guard captain, Clytus the Black, rides close enough to catch a Persian blade on his shield and return it with a thrust. The wedge begins to chew forward again. Persian veterans glance at each other in disbelief. They had bet their lives on this center being unbreakable. It is the king's heart. It is guarded by the immortals, backed by infantry blocks, supported by cavalry. No enemy should reach it intact, certainly not this quickly. But the Macedonians are here, and they are still coming. Darius's horses rear. The driver snaps the reins to keep them steady. Darius turns his head, looking not only at the companions, but at his own line. He sees left-wing cavalry drawn far away. He sees infantry struggling to shift into the gap. He sees dust-swallowing signals, men unsure which way the battle is moving. What he cannot see is control. A Persian noble beside the chariot is struck by a lance and topples face first into the dirt. Another guard horse goes down, thrashing, throwing its rider. The immortal ring tightens, but the ring is thinning. The wedge is too deep in it now. Artabazus rides nearer to the chariot, shouting, "Majesty, fall back to reform. Fall back and rally the line." Darius hesitates. For a heartbeat, he might have stayed. He might have tried to stand and let the symbol of kingship hold the army together. But symbols don't stop lances. He can see Alexander now. Not a rumor, not a star, but a man close enough to kill him. The king of Persia makes a choice that Persian veterans will remember as the moment the world tilted. He signals the driver. The royal chariot turns. At first, it is a controlled withdrawal, rolling back along the packed field. The guard cavalry tries to screen it, fighting as they ride. But once the chariot wheels turn away, something breaks in the Persian soul. People might argue later about tactics, about numbers, about the slope of the ground. But on this plain, in this dust, the army sees only one thing. The great king is leaving. A ripple passes through the center like a tremor through ice. Infantry begin to step backward. Cavalry glance over their shoulders. The immortals fight on. But the ring is no longer protecting a king. It's protecting a retreat. Alexander sees the chariot turning and surges forward with a shout that is part triumph, part fury, that the kill has slipped away. Companions press harder, trying to reach Darius before he escapes. But distance is distance, even on a battlefield that Alexander seems to fold in half. The chariot gains speed. Persian guards throw themselves into the wedge to buy seconds. Horses collide, men die in heaps. Then Darius disappears into the dust toward Arbela, and the Persian center collapses, not in one clean snap, but in a fast unraveling. Men dropping weapons, running, trying to find any road that isn't filled with Macedonian hooves. Artabazus pulls his horse around in horror. He is a veteran. He knows the battle is not fully over. But he also knows something else, deeper and colder. An empire cannot survive the sight of its king fleeing. Behind Alexander, the Macedonian phalanx advances into a center that is turning into open air. Python feels the pressure ease in front of his sarissa. He steps forward again, stunned by how quickly the impossible has become real. A few minutes ago, the Persian army was an unbroken wall. Now its heart is falling backward like a gate kicked off its hinges. But the battle is not done. To the left, where Parmenion holds the Macedonian wing, the Persians are still fighting hard. Some Persian cavalry have broken through and are raiding the rear, and the dust is too thick to know how close that danger is. Alexander reins in, breath heaving, eyes scanning the chaos. For a moment he has a choice. Chase the king and end Persia now, or turn and save his own army from a crisis still unfolding. He wheels Bucephalus. The wedge turns again, as fast as it came, and the plain, already shocked by speed once today, is about to witness it a second time. Section 4. The left wing crisis. Alexander's turn is so sudden it feels like the battle itself pivots around him. The companion wedge, breathless and blood-slick, breaks off from the collapsing Persian center and gallops back across the plain toward the sound of trouble. Their horses are lathered white. Men ride with broken lances, swords out, faces streaked with dust and sweat. They are no longer charging into victory. They are racing to prevent disaster, because on the Macedonian left, the fight has never stopped being desperate. Parmenion, old, heavy-eyed, with the calm of a man who has seen every kind of war, holds the left wing against the most sustained Persian pressure of the day. He commands the Salian cavalry and allied Greek horse, tough men but fewer in number. Across from him, Persian cavalry and infantry have pressed relentlessly, and now the left feels like it's being swallowed. The Persians there don't know Darius has fled. Dust and distance have cut the battlefield into separate worlds. For them, this is still the moment to win by envelopment. A Persian cavalry surge crashes into Parmenion's line again, louder than the last. Horses slam into shields, reins tangle, spears jab into flanks. The Salians fight in thick knots, wheeling and counterwheeling, refusing to give ground even as they are pushed backward in inches. A messenger had already found Alexander once, panting, nearly falling from his saddle, begging for help. The left was close to breaking. Persian cavalry had even punched through gaps toward the Macedonian baggage camp. Alexander did not ignore it. He could not. If the left collapsed completely, Darius might still escape with enough of an army to make the battle unfinished. Worse, Macedonian morale could crack behind him. Victory on one wing means nothing if your army is cut apart from the rear. So the king comes back, like a storm returning to a coast that thought it had survived the first wave. Python, still in the center, sees the companions streaking left through drifting dust and scattered fugitives. It's the same unbelievable speed again. The Persians around him had already been astonished by one diagonal crossing. Now they see Alexander cross the battlefield a second time in the middle of collapse, as if distance can't bind him. To Persian veterans still fighting on the left, the first warning is sound. A rising metallic thunder that is not theirs. Then it's sight. A wedge of Macedonian cavalry emerging from the dust at full gallop, bronze blazing in the sun like a moving furnace. The Persian cavalry who had broken through toward the camp are caught in the open. Their momentum carried too far forward. They turned to meet Alexander, but turning a cavalry mass is never clean. Some horses wheel too late. Some riders collide. The Persians try to form a line, but Alexander is already inside their reaction time. The companions hit them like a hammer. A Persian noble is knocked sideways by Bucephalus's shoulder and goes down under hooves. A companion's sword slices a horse's neck. It collapses and rolls, throwing its rider into the dirt. The wedge drives through the Persian cavalry's forward elements, fracturing them into fleeing fragments. Then Alexander angles toward the densest knot of fighting where Parmenion's banner stands. Parmenion sees him coming and feels, perhaps for the first time today, something close to relief. He knows the king has already broken the center. He knows this cavalry wedge has already chased the great king himself. And yet, here they are again, arriving in time to save the flank. The Thessalians rally to the sight. They tighten ranks, push forward, and their countercharge meets Alexander's blow with a kind of synchronized fury. Persian cavalry find themselves squeezed between two walls of horsemen, hit from front and side in the space of seconds. A Persian veteran named Roxanes, fighting on this wing, has no idea why the battlefield has suddenly tilted. He only knows that the Macedonian king is here, and that kings do not ride to a losing wing unless the rest of the battle has already gone wrong. He glances toward the center through the dust and sees movement that doesn't make sense. Infantry running back, standards falling, the line bending away from where Darius should be. The knowledge isn't shouted to him. It crawls into his gut. The center is gone. Persian cavalry morale begins to rot from the inside out. Men who were confident minutes ago now fight with the reflex of men trying to survive rather than win. Their charges become less coordinated. Their retreats become faster. Alexander presses them hard. He does not allow a neat withdrawal. His goal now is not only to save Parmenion, but to turn the Persian left into a rout that cannot be reassembled. So he keeps the wedge moving, always moving. He rides the gap between Persian units, slamming into flanks, forcing more separation, more panic. The Persians try to pull back toward their infantry for support. But those infantry are already wavering, already looking for Persian officers who are no longer giving orders. The Macedonian second line, those troops angled backward to resist encirclement, now steps forward, catching Persian raiders who try to flee through the rear. Archers and slingers pick off riders at distance. Hypaspists move in fast, stabbing at dismounted cavalrymen among the piles of dead horses. The left wing stabilizes. Then it advances. Parmenion's men begin to push the Persians away from the camp, away from the flank, away from any hope of turning the battle back into an organized contest. Where there had been a crisis, there is now pursuit. Python sees it all merging into one great motion. The Persian army is no longer a single thing. It is 1,000 separate decisions made in fear, each man choosing the road that seems least likely to end under a sarissa tip. By midday, the plain is a moving sea of fugitives. Cavalry without orders, infantry without standards, charioteers abandoning their vehicles. Veterans who had survived a lifetime of war now dropping weapons so they can run faster. Alexander rides among the chaos, shouting commands, restraining some men, unleashing others. He is trying to harvest victory without letting it poison his army with recklessness. He knows the Persians are beaten, but beaten armies can still sting if the pursuit becomes a scatter. Still he chases, not wildly, purposefully. He drives toward the routes Darius would take, toward the roads to Arbela and beyond, seeking to catch the king before the empire can even understand what has happened. But the distance between kings grows in dust and blood. And behind Alexander, on the flattened killing field that was supposed to destroy him, Persian veterans are left with one stunned, bitter truth. They did everything right by their own rules. They chose the ground. They brought the numbers. They prepared the weapons. They stretched the line to follow the enemy, and Alexander crossed their world so fast that their rules never had time to matter. Section 5. The aftershock of speed. The sun is high now, bleaching the plain into a hard white glare. Heat shimmers above corpses, above broken chariots, above shields half buried in dust. The battlefield no longer sounds like a battle. It sounds like the long, ragged breathing of men who have survived something they do not yet understand. Python trudges forward with the phalanx, the point of his sarissa dark with drying blood. The muscles in his shoulders feel like stone. Every step crunches over debris. Splintered shafts, snapped bow staves, trampled cloaks. Once, he passes a Persian infantryman kneeling beside a wounded horse, hands shaking as if he's trying to wake a brother. The man looks up, eyes empty. He does not lift his weapon. The war has already left him. All around Python, Macedonians are shouting for water, for order, for slaves to gather the wounded. Officers are trying to reform units that have drifted apart in pursuit. Trumpets blow again, this time not for attack, but for control. Victory must be held in the fist, not allowed to leak away. Far off to the east, the last coherent Persian groups are streaming toward Arbela. Dust trails mark their retreat like scars across the earth. Among them rides Artabazus, the royal guard veteran. His armor is battered, his beard clogged with dirt. He has lost friends in a single hour that he expected to lose over a campaign. Around him, cavalrymen try to keep some order, but their faces are the faces of men walking out of a collapsed house. They keep glancing back, half expecting the Macedonian wedge to appear again out of the haze, because that is what haunts them most. Not the chariots failing, not even the king fleeing. The speed. The way Alexander's right wing had seemed to move along two directions at once. Away, and then suddenly through. The way the Macedonian cavalry had crossed from the Persian left wing to the center and back to the left before the Persians could even read the battlefield. It makes the veterans feel old, not in years, but in warfare itself. Their instincts, built on decades of how battles normally unfolded, had been outmaneuvered by a commander who treated distance like a suggestion. Artabazus rides beside another veteran, a Bactrian named Syromachus. The man keeps muttering under his breath as if trying to correct the memory. He was there, Syromachus says, pointing vaguely behind them. Then there. Then, at the king. How? We rode to meet him. We rode. We were already moving. How did he reach the center before we could? Artabazus doesn't answer at first. If he speaks, he will have to admit what his heart already knows. There was no mystery, only a plan that used their own movements against them. He made us chase. Artabazus finally says, voice dry. He made us stretch our wing to follow him. And when we stretched, there was a gap. Syromachus inhales sharply, a gap we didn't see, a gap that didn't exist until we created it. They ride in silence after that, the silence of men who have learned that strength is not enough when it is pulled out of shape. Behind the retreating Persians, Alexander rein in on a low ridge. His cloak is torn. Bucephalus has a cut across his flank, a raw, dark line in the sweat. The king's face is streaked with dust and blood. He looks east, eyes narrowed, calculating the vanishing horizon. He wants Darius, not from hatred alone, but from understanding of empire. A king who escapes can rebuild a story. He can gather satraps, call levies, offer rewards. He can turn defeat into a new beginning. Alexander wants this to end here. He turns to Hephaestion, closest friend, commander, the one man who can meet his eye without flinching. We pursue. Light cavalry first. Companions behind. No breaking formation. If we catch him, Persia ends today. Orders ripple out. Trumpets. Riders dispatched. The pursuit begins across the scorched plain. But time is not only measured in speed, it is measured in distance already gained. Darius's chariot had fled early enough that he is hours ahead, and each hour widens into a day. The Macedonians will chase until nightfall and beyond, but they will not catch him today. Not on this field. Not after the king made the choice to flee when he did. Alexander knows it by late afternoon, when his scouts return with empty hands and dust-heavy lungs. He is furious. Not at his men, not at the plan, but at the sliver of unfinished history. His eyes flick back to the battlefield behind him, as if he could rewind time and hold the Persian king still for one more heartbeat. Yet even in fury, he understands what has been done. The Persian army is destroyed as a force. Tens of thousands are dead or scattered. Their best cavalry wings have become shattered tribes of fugitives. Their carefully prepared killing field is a graveyard that now belongs to Macedonia. Alexander returns to the main body of his army, not walking like a triumphant conqueror, but riding with the intense quiet of someone already thinking about Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, the heartlands that are now exposed. When the Macedonians regroup, Python sees him come through the ranks. Men cheer weakly at first, then louder, then with a full roar of survival. Some pound sarissas against shields. Others weep without shame. They cheer not only because they have won, but because they have seen something that feels like a new kind of war. A war where a commander can redraw the battlefield on the move. A war where speed is not only for scouts and raiders, but for the decisive blow itself. After sunset, fires are lit. The wounded are gathered. The dead are stripped and mourned. Macedonian officers count surviving units and realize, with a shock almost as deep as the battles, how many Persians were here and how quickly they broke once the center fell. On the Persian side, as remnants reorganize in frightened clusters near Arbela, a different kind of counting happens. Veterans count banners missing, nobles dead, the king gone. They try to comfort each other with the idea that another battle will come. But deep down, they remember the moment the Macedonian right wing began sliding across the plain. They remember thinking it was retreat. They remember stretching to follow. They remember how suddenly the wedge turned and appeared in the center like a god's spear thrown from nowhere. They realize they are no longer fighting the kind of enemy they were raised to defeat. Gaugamela is not just a defeat of men. It is the defeat of expectation. That night, word spreads faster than armies ever could. Darius has fled. The great king has lost the field. Alexander is coming. By the time the fires burn low, Persia is already beginning to fall, not only in territory, but in belief. Because once you witness a battlefield cross that fast, you start to suspect the world itself can be crossed just as quickly.